any simpler. All right, fuck yes. All right, we're about to go live.
Oh no.
I hope that didn't get on the air. Might be in trouble. Oh, are we live?
I think so.
Yeah, we are live, man. All right, guys. Welcome to the latest edition of Bitcoin Happy Hour. My name is Colin Harper. I'm your host. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Pat Duffy of The Giving Block, a really cool Bitcoin nonprofit that is facilitating Bitcoin donations to various charities. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Give Bitcoin. Give Bitcoin is the only service that lets you give the gift of Bitcoin and the gift of knowledge to teach your loved ones, friends, coworkers, whoever you want to give to, how Bitcoin works and why we Bitcoiners seem to be so obsessed with it. Please check out givebitcoin.io/happy hour to learn more and to start giving Bitcoin today. So with that sponsorship out of the way, I want to welcome to the show Pat Duffy. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good, man. Thanks for coming on. We featured the Giving Block a while ago in the Giving Tuesday campaign, which is capitalizing on, or should I say, Bitcoin Tuesday, right? Was the official giveaway thing for the cryptocurrency world, but it's playing on a theme of philanthropy following Black Friday and kind of the excessive expenditures that we see going into the holiday season. And we also had y'all on our recent philanthropic issue this past week. We put out an infographic, which you guys rightfully pointed out didn't really do a good job of explaining the landscape of Bitcoin philanthropy. So to start this happy hour, I just wanted you to give us some background on what engendered the Giving Block, what brought you to kind of pioneer this service, and what the Giving Block's mission is and how it's done so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I guess, thanks for having me on. One big point of clarification right off the bat, the Giving Block is not a nonprofit, it's a for-profit, but we support nonprofits and equip them to take cryptocurrency. It's super common because then the platform, everywhere you give, it's clearly a nonprofit, but we set that up, facilitate it, give them the tools. The Giving Block kind of came together originally via conversation end of 2017, just from the run up that we saw Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies trailing along. And then in a matter of a couple of weeks, in December 2017, we saw a couple $100 million get donated to nonprofits in crypto. At the time, I was at the Lupus Foundation. So trading crypto, watching that happen, and very quickly decided we have to get the organization set up to take crypto as well. So I was creating one-pagers, giving presentations to the leadership, and then working with my buddy Alex Wilson, who's now my co-founder, to get them set up, to educate them properly, and then to get the marketing off the ground so they're not just equipped to take crypto, but they're actively trying to find donors and get them into their system. So that was the first one we did. We did that through 2018, worked with a couple others, then rolling into 2019, turned it into an actual business, fully incorporated, and now we support a few dozen nonprofits. And hopefully by the end of this year, we're looking at somewhere between 200 and 400 be a great place to land.
Wow. And is it easy to onboard these guys? Is there any skepticism? Is there any kind of like, you know what I mean? Bitcoin slimy past or any sort of loose associations with the dark web? Does that scare people off, or are they usually pretty receptive?
Yeah, so for the folks that we're talking to, if we're getting into a room with them, it never goes poorly. So we don't even have one experience where the conversation didn't go fantastically well, because like you said, a lot of misconceptions coming in, but especially when we have a larger room full of people, we usually get 2 or 3 full-on converts, and then they're trying to invest in cryptocurrencies and get investment advice, which we obviously don't give. But they just don't know. They're like, it's not backed by anything. There's nothing valuable about it inherently. You talk about the fact that governments can't print it. You talk about the fact that you can own an account, take it offline. If you're a political activist in China, that means they can't shut down your accounts and prevent you from doing the work you're doing. You tell them about Venezuela. There's an infinite number of things you can talk about as you tell them what the actual technology is, how the system is protected, it gets safer as it grows. It's pretty easy to sell them on the tech, and then it's just a matter of, okay, we get it, we like it, how can we do this? And then that step's pretty easy. The toughest barrier is just getting an institutional crypto account. So getting everyone to put their passports in or their driver's license. Once they have that set up, then we can rig it up to a widget and get them off and running.
Right. So going into that, kind of looking at the internal operations. So these guys have institutional accounts with big brokers and things like that. Does that mean that the Bitcoin that is sent to them is then sent to addresses in those accounts and then it's liquidated? Is that how you guys handle the fiat conversion?
Yeah, so they'll open up with us. We use Gemini. So they open
Okay.
an institutional Gemini account that they own completely. We don't have like an umbrella account. It doesn't flow through us. They just get the wallet addresses for if they don't want to use dynamic ones within the widget for the different cryptocurrencies they want to receive. But generally speaking, it's the dynamic wallet addresses presented by the exchange. Every time a donor comes into the widget, it generates a new one. They each have a different point of entry, and then the donation goes to the nonprofit.
Okay, cool. So that kind of seems to be brokering a pretty good system here, still giving the nonprofits control. Because I think we always talk about how great Bitcoin donations are, but one of the things I think some people might maybe not fail to recognize, but maybe just kind of ignore is the fact that these nonprofits still need cash, so they're having to convert. And I think that model of making sure that they have individual accounts that you guys help them set up, but don't necessarily control, is kind of a good place to mediate and kind of build the bridge between cashing out the Bitcoin and fiat, and hopefully getting to a place where we can have circular economies with Bitcoin, right? So that these nonprofits aren't having to cash out. Because I think that that's probably where most of the promise for the transparency comes for this, because people say the blockchain and Bitcoin will be great for philanthropic transparency. And that is true. But once that Bitcoin is cashed out and turned into fiat, that transparency goes away. So kind of a long-winded way to introduce my next question. What do you think is the next bridge towards that, greater transparency? And what do you think is the key to unlocking a Bitcoin circular economy to where we don't have to go through fiat anymore and we can just use the blockchain's assurances for these donations? Yeah. I know it's a big question, but.
Oh, it's great. So first and foremost, is it going to happen and where is it going to happen, even before the why and the when? I think yes, and I think it comes from nonprofit adoption before it comes from an individual grassroots type movement or institutional stakeholders in the financial sector, because the incentive model, I think, is so much more objectively clear. So they're a nonprofit. They want to receive this form of money and fundraise it, because when donors give an appreciated asset that's classified as property, same as stocks, they get a huge tax incentive. There really is no incentive for you to buy a handbag with Bitcoin right now. You just hear horror stories about pizza and everything else. Why are you giving up the asset that's going up instead of the one that's going down perpetually due to inflation? So the for-profit model just isn't working. And when we're trying to figure that part out, the nonprofit model is flawless. And then, like you're saying, circular economy is holding on to it and distributing it. One, there's the transaction costs of having to automatically convert it. It's not a ton, but if you're doing it all the time, you might as well keep it, even if you're moving it into a stable coin on an exchange and avoiding some of the additional fees. If you're leaving it in Bitcoin, using it as an investment, that's cool as well. Kind of like who is it? The UN, Jesus Christ, I'll think of it. There's someone who started a fund, UNICEF, obviously.
Oh, right.
So they started a fund and they're distributing it in the form of grants. The transparency piece is the circular economy piece that you're talking about. The incentive in the nonprofit space, that's what they compete over. So they compete over how objectively can they deliver to their donors, metrics on what it is they're doing, demonstrate impact and show transparency. That's not how for-profit companies win. If they get challenged on certain things, they have to push that forward to try and regain trust, but it's more of a reactive thing than it is a proactive thing. That's how nonprofits win since the advent of the internet, and everyone's competing for that headspace when it comes to donors. They want transparency, they want accountability. Crypto is a perfect way to do that. You can follow money.
Yeah, so blockchain should be perfect for them. Obviously, the last piece missing is just wide adoption so that they don't have to liquidate. But it sounds like from what you're saying from there, the blockchain's assurances are perfect for these nonprofits because they can show their donor base, this is where your dollars are being put to work.
Yeah, and the beautiful part about it is they have to talk about it constantly. So when it comes to crypto adoption, the only way they're going to get donors is by constantly talking about it. And the more loudly they speak, the better they do. And then as more come in, there are more loud organizations online constantly talking about it. For-profit companies, if you follow Wendy's, like maybe there's a couple where it's actually somewhat stimulating and people actually follow the accounts. Nonprofits have giant followings, incredibly active, and they're constantly trying to activate a community to take actions. The more nonprofits who pour in, it's not just that they're adopting it on an individual level, like a for-profit running a pilot. They have to advertise it constantly, however it is they're using blockchain and crypto in order to get the thing they're looking for, which is donations.
Right. And going into that, you kind of seem to intimate there that you're seeing more activity in the Bitcoin nonprofit space. As a way to jump in to the infographic that we put out, for this week's theme on philanthropy, Bitcoin Magazine put out an infographic that compared some of the giving blocks, philanthropic donations that have filtered through y'all's website and project, and then also BitGive next to the Pineapple Fund and HelperBit, and also I believe there was Bitcoin 100 was also in there. And your team rightfully pointed out that this kind of gives a skewed view of the way philanthropy is conducted in Bitcoin. It kind of made the Pineapple Fund whale look like the end-all be-all of donations, when in fact, as you said, Fidelity Charitable has solicited some 100 million worth of cryptocurrency donations since its inception. So to kind of set the record straight, could you just kind of go into some of the background philanthropic efforts that maybe people don't see as much, and maybe how the industry seems to be kind of picking up some steam? Because as I know, you guys have seen an increase in donations since you guys started out in 2018 as well.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the first thing is really more than the amount of dollars raised. It's the same reason you have like quadratic voting systems. We're trying to activate a community and get perpetual action taken by as many people as possible so that you have something sustainable rather than one bulk sum. So it's great when there are major gifts in the crypto space and someone's offsetting a giant tax burden. But like in that same boat, then you could look at someone like Ripple, who's given 100 million plus in cryptocurrency donations. Take the $4 million gift that they gave to the Ellen DeGeneres Wildlife Fund. They brought on Ashton Kutcher. He did a crypto transaction, quote unquote, on the Ellen DeGeneres show. They don't even take XRP on their website, Ellen DeGeneres. So when we talk about impact, like the big thing that I wanted to point out when we were going back and forth is like, you don't just want a nonprofit receiving a big lump sum of crypto. You want them actively fundraising crypto so that that community continues to grow. And you want to get to a point where hundreds and then thousands and then tens of thousands, 100,000s, most nonprofits are actively talking about crypto and accepting it. I think it's a great road to adoption, and it's also a great legitimizer for an industry that's still kind of pushed to the side.
Right, absolutely. And I think also this is why organizations like the Giving Block are important, because you don't just want a lump sum made one time and just say, here it is, here's your Bitcoin, deal with it. It's good to have a guide, a Virgil, so to speak, kind of taking these newcomers through Bitcoin, because it's really complicated. And especially if you're dealing with large sums, you kind of want someone to take you by the hand, because if you don't know how to manage your funds or don't know how to open up a wallet, don't know about recovery seeds, you could potentially be risking, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of funding.
Yeah.
And I want to hit on something that you said about Pine, which I think is true. One of my favorite things when looking at actions like Pine's is to really think about the incentives and the motives. So there's something that seems kind of beautifully poetic about the fact that a bunch of people who started mining Bitcoin when it was still a very new and novel thing that no one understood, found themselves stupidly rich and decided to give that money away, right? There's something very poetic about that. And I think Bitcoiners, we would love to believe that that's the motive behind it. You mentioned, obviously, tax breaks. There's also, the maybe not necessarily far-flung conspiracy or possibility that some of these people donating lump sums may have procured their Bitcoin through less than ethical means, right? And maybe they're trying to find a way to offload it. I'm going to be not so cynical and say that it's probably out of the good of Pine's heart, and also, like you said, the tax incentive. I know this is a narrative that you're really big on. So I see you're itching to comment. So go ahead and give me your comment, and also kind of could you pontificate on the benefit of giving Bitcoin for offsetting taxes?
Yeah. So in terms of the incentive for giving and the incentive for folks to get it to the intersection of crypto and philanthropy, The one comment you were saying where they might have made their money through less than ethical means and now they're donating crypto, that's, I would say, in crypto donations, significantly less likely than that of a traditional donor. So someone who's giving me the credit card or whatever else, because the trail is so much easier to follow, generally speaking, with different cryptos. And then we always refer to the nonprofits, we compare it to like if you had a big check ceremony out of the laundromat that you've been laundering money through and like brought a nonprofit in with the press and taking pictures. It's like, this is a highly scrutinized institutional account from a public facing organization that could advertise how much they got, talk about it, draw attention to the transaction. It's like, if you're trying to launder money, you don't get the tax offset because you'd have to report that to the IRS, the crypto you gave, which then ties it back to you. So odds are, if you're making money through nefarious means in the crypto space, you would never give it to a nonprofit unless you really wanted to get caught. In terms of the tax benefit and then why other folks get into it, we struggle with this in general, kind of the incentive behind getting into this. And when we look at certain crypto projects that everybody loves, but they never get anywhere because they don't have an actual value proposition or a business model, but they seem like a great idea at the time. With our model, we're constantly trying to figure out, okay, what's the lowest barrier to entry for nonprofits? Because we started off as like consultants, asking them to pay a startup fee, and then it was nothing after that. And then we were like, let's try to add a transaction fee, but maybe crypto donors are gonna get really mad about that. And then we were like, well, no, they won't, because we're bringing so many nonprofits into the ecosystem. We're creating so much volume for crypto and legitimacy. Of course, they'll see that value. So we worry about that as well. Sort of how can we make this into a business so we can hire more people to get more nonprofits taking crypto, talking about crypto, fundraising, without pissing off crypto donors who are like, everything should be free and entirely decentralized. We shouldn't have middlemen. And it's like, well, would you like someone to take this message and bring it to people who are never going to hear it? Or should we all just, sit in WeWorks together and talk shit about the fact that we invested in something before anyone was paying attention? And I'm definitely more the latter. I would like to get more people involved. And if I can do it as a full-time job, instead of spending 60, 70 hours a week doing bullshit, and then trying to do this 10 hours a week like we were doing as a pet hobby, that requires a business model. So anyway, there's back to your original thing. The incentive for people to give and the incentive for people to get nonprofits online accepting those donations, there has to be a business model. And if people are expecting it to be, if you give a donation, it better just be out of the goodness of your heart. Or if you set them up, then there better be no profit model. I think that's why a lot of crypto projects don't get anywhere.
Right. Well, I mean, it's really hard to, this is why open source software often has a hard time, right? Because there's a benefit of funding when you're a centralized company and you have a profit model. Go to an equity investor and say, we're a nonprofit and we have no profit model, you're not going to get funding because that equity investor wants an exit or a return on his or her investment. What you said something that I was latching onto. Oh, yes. Talking about getting the ball rolling, and this was kind of a pet hobby at first. So what kind of drove you to really jump full time into this? Has philanthropy always been a passion of yours? What led Pat Duffy down the road to What led Pat Duffy to the intersection of Bitcoin and philanthropy at this crossroads?
Yeah, ultimately, I found, so first the philanthropy piece. I was a consultant for the pharmaceutical industry. So I wasn't a pharma lobbyist, but I was a consultant for pharma lobbyists. And pretty much this weird little pocket that I ended up in just coming out of school, because I was a poli-sci major, had an internship at Merck, it all just kind of fell together, was when a pharma company, there's a bill coming to the floor and it's going to affect profit margins, instead of just saying, let's go in there and tell them this is bad for us, they're smart. So they identify, okay, who else does this hurt? What other stakeholders would want to be involved with this? It's a process called alliance development. And then by the time they go to approach the Hill and try to get a bill changed, there's hundreds of nonprofits, there's think tanks, there's doctors, there's hospitals, and they all see that there are these negative side effects from something that would hurt the pharmaceutical industry that'll also hurt everyone else. And then you get this groundswell of collaboration, people saying, we're pushing back against this. And now you get some counteraction, that's the Protect Patient Care Act or whatever they call it, versus the Protect a Pharma Company's Bottom Line Act. So it's really smart strategy and finding those overlaps in the alliance development field. Just ended up working with a bunch of nonprofits, and then another pharma consultant jumped over to the Lupus Foundation. At the same time, all the opioid crisis stuff was popping off in 2017, which was a nightmare, obviously. So within a matter of weeks doing that, I was like, no more of this, please. Working on the opioid crisis from the pharma side. Ended up at a nonprofit, and then plain and simple, how I got into crypto is Alex Wilson, my co-founder. I'm hyper competitive. He got me into trading crypto. I was like, oh, I'll get better at this than him. And that never happened. It was just every time I had an idea of like, oh, have you seen this? It uses sharding. It seems like it's scalable. And it's like 2 other projects tried that last year and the year before, different leadership team. This guy came over, they both failed. It doesn't actually scale. I'd be like, just take my money, you invest it. But yeah, so he dragged me into crypto at first, kicking and screaming. And then the intersection was sort of happenstance.
Word. Yeah, I mean, it does kind of seem happenstance, but really cool that you guys could drum up this business and this project and this kind of business model so quickly, kind of thinking on your feet. So kind of some ins and outs of the Giving Block. Do you guys find that most of your contributors are one-off contributions or recurring contributors?
Yeah, mostly one-off, but I'm assuming that's going to change as it gets bigger. Mm-hmm. So we have Save the Children is our first big nonprofit that we set up to take crypto. And now we're moving in Boys and Girls Club is a great one. We've got a couple others that aren't locked in, but hopefully we'll be announcing those soon. Based on that, we're hoping to attract blockchain and crypto companies like what the work we do with Brave to do more with the nonprofits, because again, our goal is loud. Just make everything as loud as possible. And then that spreads the word to donors, that spreads the word to nonprofits. More nonprofits take it, more donors pay attention. It's a great adoption cycle and it's good for the business. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. Is right now it's a lot of one-offs, and that's generated by campaigns that we kind of centrally coordinated. Everyone gets the same marketing kits. The nonprofits get up to speed. They tweet down the same hashtag, kind of like the Bitcoin Tuesday one.
Right, and you guys had some good feedback from that. Rainn Wilson was involved in that, right?
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah, that was cool. So for our listeners who aren't freaks about The Office, Rainn Wilson plays Dwight in The Office. He's also had a few other roles in some other great movies as well, or movies in addition to those TV shows. But I thought that was so cool. Just to see him involved in something crypto related.
I'm still tingling. That came up as an interview, like just conversation we were having with a nonprofit. We were like, so how did you start paying attention to crypto? They were like, one of our celebrity ambassadors told us to get into it. We were like, who? And they were like, Rainn Wilson. Like, are you close to him? It's like, yeah. And he wanted us to take Bitcoin really bad. I'm like, do you think he'd make content for this? And they were like, oh, definitely. And I'm like, we've been doing marketing plans with you for months. Like, how is this just not?
Yeah, how is this not on the radar? That's hilarious.
Yeah, so we want to do more celebrity stuff too. So we're just now, this month, we're going to be going back to all the nonprofits we work with, and especially these big ones coming in. It's now kind of a part of our initial, here's how you should market to crypto donors game plan, being like, make sure you touch base with all your celebrity ambassadors, because if any of them are sneakily into crypto and the world just isn't aware of this yet, that's an incredibly valuable tool to get like huge whatever coming online and being like, oh, I fucking love Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Great marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And in terms of onboarding nonprofits to Bitcoin and stuff, does the Rainn Wilson model happen a lot? Is it like where these celebrities or perhaps just a donor will just mention to these companies, be like, hey, have you checked out Bitcoin? It might be of interest to you. Like, how does the conversation get started? Are you usually the ones approaching? Do the nonprofits approach you? Like, what does that look like?
It's a great question. It's a pretty healthy mix. So we have, a couple dozen times it's an organization where they're like, someone on our board says we should take crypto, or the CEO just gets really into it, or there's a younger member of a team on a bigger organization. They reach out to us and they're like, hey, I don't think I can get anyone on board with this, but like, it would be really cool to get them into this as well. And then we end up just getting their leadership team onto a call and helping them have some internal conversation. And then sometimes we just hit up an organization, they want nothing to do with it, but they jump on a webinar to learn more. And then by the end of it, they're like, oh, this is fantastic. It's not at all what I thought it was.
Right. And so what do you think is needed to get the ball rolling for people on this? Is it kind of just like the neighbor effect? It's like, oh, okay, X charity is accepting it, so maybe we should also accept it. Like, what do you think kind of greases the wheels for adoption here?
Yeah. I think a big thing is crypto companies and blockchain or like companies getting into what's called CSR, so like corporate social responsibility, in the same way that every major company and institution has nonprofit partners in the traditional sector. Not everyone in blockchain crypto has that yet because the companies are so young. Like if you're whatever company, if you're Kraken, you're an exchange, whatever else it might be, or you're just a project. We're talking to storage now, talking about like an employee giving program. Just the idea that if it's Boys and Girls Club of America or Save the Children, 2.8 million Twitter followers, they're fundraising crypto. They would love to produce more crypto and blockchain content. For you to work with that organization that has millions and millions of followers, if you're just like, it could be a nominal amount that you're giving as a gift, or just the fact that you're like, oh, here's a technology you can use to store some of your backup data. And now you can say you're using blockchain, go back to crypto donors with that message, collect donations based on it. They want that churn. So blockchain and crypto companies reaching out to one, nonprofits that are already taking it. And then two, getting nonprofits equipped to accept your token, your cryptocurrency, whatever it might be. And then generating content, not a one-off gift, but like get an organization actively fundraising crypto, and then churning for-profit partners into that system so that they're co-creating content and advertising to traditional and crypto stakeholders.
Rad. Well, Pat, thanks so much, man, for coming on. We're brushing up against the 30-minute mark. I've already abused your time trying to get your live stream set up. Is there anything else you'd like to share to our listeners, or anything you'd like to touch on that wasn't said?
Sure. If you work in blockchain and crypto, like the last thing I mentioned, reach out to us. If you want to make a serious donation, don't do it in the dark. Talk about it, because that gets other people to give. That gets more nonprofits taking crypto. That's good for adoption. If you're a company, a project, whatever you do with blockchain and crypto, talk to us. If you want to work with a nonprofit, you don't have to just write them a check and get nothing for it. We can help you figure out what event you can get a sponsorship for, co-create content, blogs, interviews with leadership. We make sure that that works out better for corporate partners. And if you're connected to or run a nonprofit, please hit us up. We'd love to not only set them up to take crypto, but help them actively fundraise to try to make it a part of the brand.
Rad. Yeah, and for all of our listeners, make sure you check out thegivingblock.com. They've got loads of nonprofits. You can definitely find something that's near and dear to your heart. If you're holding Bitcoin and you're enjoying this appreciation, show some love. Give some Bitcoin. Anyway, thanks again, Pat. Really appreciate you joining me, man. And to all our listeners, we'll see you next week.
All right, Colin. Thanks.